I think a lot of people are doing mental math, so they aren't actually looking at the data in their situations. What do we dictate as a healthy relationship with money? Does it include control? Probably not. I substitute control for care or collaboration. We have strong spending muscles. Our savings muscles are not as strong because we don't have to exercise them as much. It's not that you don't deserve those things, of course you do. But future you also deserves a certain level of peace when it comes to your finances as much as you do today. You're worthy. Simple. You're worthy. That's it.
Hey, family. Welcome to the Inspired House. As always, I'm your host, Desmond Davis. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you had a good Easter. Hope your family's good, your mom, all of them, all the family. Hope everybody's good. Today, family, let's get straight into it. We have a very special guest. We have been following the messages, the emails, some of y'all have been just pulling up on me at the barbershop. Don't do that no more. But y'all have made a request to want to discuss and talk about money. And I couldn't think of anybody better than our guest who we have now, who is an amazing money mind, who is an amazing marriage and family therapist. And I think will just do an awesome job of helping us better understand our money so we can get down that financial wellness part. For those of you who are a part of the Inspired House and our Essential Eight, you already know who I'm talking about. You already know what I'm talking about. But I don't want to take any more time, so I'm so excited to introduce to some and present to others. Jacent, Wamala, how you doing?
I'm so good. I'm excited about this chat.
Dope, dope. Thank you, yo, so much for joining us. Like, with everything you got going on, you are pretty busy. You were mentioning something with Golden Sachs earlier.
Yeah, it's pretty busy. I'm in a program. One of the things I'm doing right now is a program with Goldman Sachs Black in Business. So they have an initiative to, support small Black female business owners. So it's a good time, but it's all for a good reason.
I I couldn't agree more, and I think that resonates a lot with what I've seen in my short time, kind of knowing you, being in sort of similar coaching and training backgrounds and connecting that way. I've been kind of watching from afar and seeing just the work you've been doing and how you just keep yourself not just busy but productive. And so I know a decent bit, but I think for our audience who maybe they heard or saw the emails and I said financial coach, financial wellness, let's talk about it. And they said, oh, yes, I'm locked in, and they may not fully know you. I just figured maybe you can introduce yourself and tell the Inspired House fam a little bit about you.
Yes. I'm Jacent Wamala. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and financial clarity coach. And so I was born in Uganda, raised in where I still live. And essentially, like many people, I didn't learn a lot about money growing up. My family, naturally had to come and learn a whole new economic system. But even those who are born and raised in a place don't necessarily get the money lessons that are going to make them financially free. And so I feel like, I got to college and we all got the same checklist of like, go to school and get the job, and so I did all those things, but I still didn't have the freedom and flexibility that I wanted. And so it didn't work for me, that checklist. And then life happened. I ended up, getting divorced and then losing my dad just a few months later, all in the same year, 2014. And it was a really tough time. I was in grad school at the time to become a marriage and family therapist. Ironically. And it was during that season where everything kind of came to a head because I didn't have financial literacy and I didn't know what I was doing. And so by the time I looked up in 2016, I realized that I was in a lot of debt. Long story short, I ended up paying off nearly six figures in 3 years before I turned 30, and then saving $30,000 6 months after that, growing a six-figure business and really shifting into the money space after I kind of noticed what was coming up for myself and other people in therapy.
Wow. That is a lot in just a short, brief amount of time. And to kind of go through all that, first off, thank you for your transparency. I think that's one of the biggest things that caught my attention in when we first connected and following you and seeing just some of your work and just how you share your story and just the transparency in there is just so awesome. So I guess when as we kind of get into it, one of the things we really focus on in the Inspired House is helping people with what we call their essential eight. So essentially, this idea of how when we look at our lives as a house, every room in the house has a level of representation. Your office in a house or in an apartment or whatever that considers your career, your library is your mental health, your garden is your overall personal well-being, spiritual health, so on and so forth. The gym, that's your actual physical health, staying healthy, things of that nature. And then we talk about the safe. And a lot of people just are usually locked in with what we're talking about until we get to the safe part. And then that's when people kind of like they start scrunching up, they start getting tight. And working in the coaching space and working in the mental health space, I've been really lucky to have a lot of conversations. And it seems like when we talk about finances, that's where it gets kind of and a little icky and people start kind of shrinking down. But you work with women as of course like as a therapist and as a money coach. So for you, when did you first notice that money was showing up as just a relational or mental health issue with the people that you get to work with?
Truthfully, from the beginning, it was always something that played a role. Money played a role in the access to services someone might have. So they might have to choose, their services specifically because of money, whether it's using their insurance, being able to pay out of pocket, or, visit the clinic at the university, which is, a different type of way of accessing mental health. So it always played a role. But then in the therapy room, I heard it coming up when it came to women feeling like they were limited in what they could do and what their options were if they were in an unsavory or unsupportive work environment, we'll say. They had to stay because they didn't have the money to leave or the opportunity to just drop everything and shift gears. So it was always something that came up. It was just probably just seeing it over and over and over again that I'm like, what's going on here? Because as you know, at least not in my program, I don't know about you in your program, we didn't talk about money as it pertains to how it affects someone's mental health and what options there are for someone to be able to deal with that. So it was also like, we didn't talk about this in school. So what is it? I didn't realize financial therapy was even a thing until years and years later. So it definitely was just like this pattern that kept on coming back in the room.
So you said despite all of the work and that being something from the beginning, you kind of painted an amazing picture, especially for our sisters out there, of being kind of stuck in this circle of your things are not looking good relationally, but you kind of have to, and things are not looking good in terms of job wise, but you kind of have to stay in that so that you can kind of just continue in the circle, not even progress forward. And eventually got you talking about this thing of financial therapy. Can you tell me a little bit more about what is financial therapy?
Yeah, so there's a certification that a clinician could go through or someone who's on the finance side, where essentially it is kind of this bridge between mental health and money, and someone can actually give financial advice on what to do with your funds. Now, I'm not a certified financial therapist. I don't do financial therapy. I do financial coaching. But there are
Mhm.
options for someone who's looking to, you know, work in that intersection when it comes to helping folks with mental health and money, so that they're well informed. There's a whole certification process. So if you're looking for a financial therapist, I know that the association also has a directory. If you're like, I know I specifically need to find someone who focuses on this thing because it's a huge part of what's coming up for me and my mental health, and or mentioning it to your provider if it's something that you feel like needs to be integrated into your services, for you to be able to make sure you're hitting on everything that is contributing to what's going on in your, in your wellness journey. So yeah, it's a specific certification that people can get, that I look at and I dabble with. I'm like, should I get it? I don't know if I want to give
Mhm.
financial advice necessarily. I would really like educating and empowering those who I work with to learn so that they can make choices from, a place of knowledge and information.
Mhm. I like that. So I didn't even know that was like a whole thing. That's amazing, and I think that's really important. What forgive me if I'm kind of circling back, but I'm kind of rehearsing again your story. What did that do for you when you started, for lack of better words, kind of cracking the code when it comes to money, finances, and how that affects you overall? Like when you started cracking the code for money, what did that do for you?
So there's the before and the after, because there are some other codes that I cracked before I got to my finances, and then cracking the financial code opened some other doors. So there were some things that I did prior to my finances that were kind of like the gateway for me, where it
Mhm.
was like my physical health. You talk about the different rooms and parts of the house. I kind of was working on
Yeah.
different rooms and areas of my house prior to my financial journey, which is what I think helped me to gain the momentum that I did in my finances, because I had had so much practice setting a goal and, doing the experiment with myself in my life, that I think made it
Mhm.
easier. However, for me, I feel like the financial breakthrough was one that I call like a gateway transformation. It opens the door for so many other opportunities and ability to work on, some of the things in the safe, the other parts of your house. It kind of
Mhm.
encompasses all of those things, because your finances are tied to like your profession, your finances are tied to your relationships, your finances are tied to your health and well-being, whether you work or overwork yourself hustling, or any of those things. So I feel like it really becomes that gateway transformation to the other areas of your house that you want to focus on naturally, because you ain't got no choice. So, it really made it so that when I ended up meeting and getting to know my now husband, that was a part of the conversation. Finances was a part of the conversation, not and then it was in a very natural way. It wasn't weird or awkward. It was just very honest and direct. And that set the foundation for the pace of our relationship to this day. So I really think that
Mhm.
it opened up some doors and opportunities to level up, not just in my finances, in some other areas too.
Wow. So okay, so this was like a holistic type of work that you started with, and just building. When with that, and kind of in the coaching space, you already know we talk a lot about, before we can get to transformation, we have to first address mindset, right? And so I'm thinking about people who I know, and I was hearing a little bit in kind of what you were doing, I think, in addressing like holistically the different areas of, for lack of a better word, your inspired house. And I'm thinking of mindset. And when I'm talking or when I'm coaching folk, and I'm curious to know if you run into it, and if so, what you have done, it if when you're talking about money, if they say something like, I don't have a mindset problem, I just don't make enough. What is how have you navigated that as a coach, and what's been something helpful that you've done in helping people with that type of response?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we all have room to grow. So
Mhm.
even if we don't call it a problem, a mindset problem, then my question would become, so what space do you have to grow when it comes to money? And so if you just don't make enough, what is it that's keeping you from being able to figure out how much more you need to make, what options you have in order to make that happen, and what your mind is telling you, and even if it's not your mind, what it is that you think, or what obstacles are in the way. Because sometimes we feel like the factors are external. It's the
Yeah.
system, it's some outside thing that's keeping us from being able to do what we want. That's not to say that those outside things are not real factors
Yeah.
that come into play. They are
Yeah.
100%. But the only
Yeah.
things that we can actually control or influence are ourselves. So I think that, in this kind of way, depending on our report, I would be like, you're lying to yourself. I have all my students read The Lies We Tell Ourselves, The Psychology of Self-Deception. Um, because again, there's always room for growth. I literally have multi-million dollar coaches that still have room for growth. They still have to work on, their psychology or their way of thinking about things. They still need to be open. And when you talk to the most quote unquote materially successful people, they are students. They don't believe that they
Mm,
have it all figured out. They know that there's more to learn and they're willing to put themselves in the position of being a student so that they can learn. And so that's the posture I think of a person who is ready, willing, and able to evolve. Because honestly, at the end of the day, that's what this whole thing requires is evolution.
yeah.
I had to evolve from who I was when I first looked at my net worth, calculating that and realizing that it was negative, and saying, well, how did I get here? What's going on? And just not putting my head in the sand and practicing my same old avoidant behaviors, pretending like, oh, it'll resolve itself. I had to look at the situation, or I chose to look at the situation, which is a sign of evolution. And then it was, okay, so what are we going to do about this? And then making another choice. And so I really think that when it comes up for someone that I just don't make enough, great. Like, let's look at the data to confirm. And then let's get to brainstorming on what options you have to move forward. I just don't like the idea of like being stuck or like there's no option, especially if you have access to the internet and you have any kind of electronic device.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of opportunity considering
That's something to work with.
in today's day and age. Yeah, so it's just hard for me to accept that someone is stuck with how much access we have to things today.
Wow. It sounds like you're really kind of pointing to clarity in that initial step is people necessarily aren't always stuck. They're just not clear on what the next move is. And so things are kind of foggy, right? And so it sounds like that's kind of a big piece in what you do. Now, one of the things you've kind of talked about and I'm hearing kind of threaded through is this idea of not accountability or I guess accountability or self agency and stuff. And so when what has been some of the you talked about the lies we tell ourselves, that book. What have been some other tactics you've used to kind of help people have that first initial aha moment of like, oh well dang, no, this is doable. Like I just saying I never thought of it that way. Like this is actually something I can actually work towards.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing mental math. So they aren't actually looking at the data in their situation. So once we are look at the numbers, that will tell us a clear story. So that usually will make it to like, huh, okay. And even when I talk to someone and they're, let's say, $5,000 deficit every single month, when we look at their numbers, like every month they are spending 5,000 more dollars than they make. Even in a situation like that, yes. Even in a situation like that, someone can walk away from that conversation inspired because again, the numbers are just data. They just tell us where we're at. They don't tell us where we're going. But having the clarity, I love that you brought that word up because it's like my favorite thing. Um, helps us to say what direction do we need to go in and how can we accelerate that process. So I've literally had conversations with folks like, okay, you're missing $5,000 a month. How can you make up for that $5,000 a month? And we brainstorm, and within minutes, they've got options and they're feeling very clear and know exactly what to do to move forward, more encouraged than they came in. And so I really do think that piece can be transformative. The other piece about it, if we're talking about mindset, is probably because I'm a therapist, thinking about how we talk about money. And if you've ever said or heard the phrase, relationship with money, I need to have a better relationship with money. I need to improve my relationship with money. At the same time, we hear or talk about getting in control of money. So we talk about a relationship with money, we talk about being in control of money. And I don't know about anyone listening, but I've been in a controlling relationship. Have you ever been in a relationship where power and control were major elements of that relationship? And did you like it? Did you want to stay in that relationship? I got out of that kind of relationship. I will never find myself in another relationship like that. So
Mm,
when we talk about money, we may want to consider whether our relationship with money is a healthy one, and what do we dictate as a healthy relationship with money? Does it include control? Probably not. I substitute
mhm.
control for care or collaboration. How can I take better care of my money? Because do you want to be in a relationship where you're cared for? Probably. And I don't know if is that externalizing? Being able to separate out and have this conversation, even though money is like an inanimate object, right? It's just green pieces of paper with like dead people's faces
Mhm.
on it. Being able to separate that relationship and kind of think of it as its own entity helps us to see it a little bit differently, because if you knew that you wanted to have a more healthy relationship with money, then what does that healthy relationship need to look like? If you are holding on to and hoarding money because you're scared that you're going to lose it all or whatever the case is, that's not going to allow for the money to flow. It needs to be able to flow. When something stagnates like a pond, there's disease that begins
Yeah.
to erupt. And so it's really being able to shift how you think about money and how you talk about money just as much as what you do with the money. So if you can go to Starbucks and you can blow $10 on a drink, can you put that amount of money in your savings? Can you put that amount of money toward debt? And so people will be like, well, yeah, that's easy. Okay, so why are you not? Just turn a habit into growing your money muscle, which means you have to exercise it. We have really strong
Mhm.
spending muscles because we have bills. We have to pay for our kids' activities, daycare, you know what I mean? Like clothes or whatever the case is. We have to spend money, so we have strong spending muscles. Our savings muscles are not as strong because we don't have to exercise them as much as our other muscles. Um, and all you have to do is provide yourself the opportunity to be able to do so. So it's little things like that that I feel like kind of create unlocks for people when I'm talking to them.
Yo, that created an unlock for me. I've never considered, especially in certain circles and in certain ways of thinking, there is this talk of making looking at money as a tool, or going more extreme and saying making money your slave. And like, I've yeah,
Yeah.
and the compare and contrast of slave versus relationship is like, is that what you really want? And the care and the collaboration piece, I think, is something I've never heard of before. And I absolutely love. I mean, that's a mindset shift for me. What I want to follow up with is, you're addressing a lot in terms of mindset, but you also kind of talk about how our relationship with money can be uniquely affected by our nervous system, right? And one of the things you talked about was how sometimes your nervous system may not be ready for everything you want, which that sounds deep. And I'm like, oh, like my deep philosophical muscles like, ooh, tell me more. But what does that mean, and what does that actually look like? If somebody's listening right now and they're saying like that kind of resonates, but I want to know more, what does that look like?
For each person, it might look a little bit different, but essentially, it's kind of having a ceiling on what you are ready, willing, and able to receive. And so, that then becomes kind of like some spiritual work, depending on whatever it is, you believe, to grow your capacity to receive. Because, and I'm like, this is, I guess it probably applies to everybody. I'm like, to me, it starts to become very spiritual, because to me, everything that you want is already available to you. Everything that you need is probably provided for. And so it's being able to recognize that at all times and be open to more. So that becomes a twofold process, one that can be done, whether it's in therapeutic work, whether it's through coaching. You to some extent can do it by yourself to some extent. There's books like The Big Leap that talk about upper limiting or self-sabotage. So one of the ways that it'll come up, that someone will see it or be able to say, is this something that is a nervous system problem is where you kind of do this financial self-sabotage. Like things start going
Mm.
well for you financially, and you essentially kind of like throw a monkey wrench in it yourself. So it's like you start making more money, you get a bonus, you get a refund, you get an inheritance, a large sum of money, you get a new job, you're making more in your business, like more is coming to you, but then you are not stewarding it well. And you know that you could be doing better. That's a level of
Mhm.
like self sabotage or upper limiting, which is talked about in that book, The Big Leap. That could be keeping you from being able to have what you want, but it's because there's this threshold that you're meeting when it comes to what
Mhm.
you think or believe you deserve or what you can have. So that's where there's multiple angles that you can hit it from. It does, I think, become kind of like a spiritual thing to revisit, to expand your capacity to receive all the good things that are available to you. And I don't know if I want to say it's hard to have the conversation. It's interesting to have the conversation at the same time as like very sad and horrific things are happening in the world at the same time. So
Oh yeah, no.
it's being able to hold the complexity of like I can receive good things and good things can happen to me while also bad things are happening in the world that I don't align with. And so sometimes we're like, well, why is it that I like things should be going okay for me but not for someone else? So it's really being able to dig into what it's connected to for that specific person so that we can rewrite that line of code. Like if we were coding and you have to make sure that
Mhm.
for those now, maybe I might be aging myself. Like back when we used to have MySpace and pretty much you were coding your page, right? You had to make sure that your
Yep.
sentences were closed. You make sure you put everything right where it's supposed to be, or your page isn't going to work properly. And so the same thing goes with our mindset is that there's this code that we received from growing up and what we've been exposed to, the things that we learned or didn't learn in our family. And that code might be outdated
Mhm.
for where we are right
Yeah.
now in life. And if we don't update our coding, society will. So we're going to have coding regardless. We're going to be programmed regardless. But are you updating and reprogramming yourself, or are you allowing someone or something else to do that process, which then you're at the whim of whatever that thing is. So it's it's interesting because for each person it might look a little bit different, but usually it comes up as like self-sabotage, financial sabotage, the emotional eating, right? Emotional spending. I was an emotional spender by way of emotional eating. So if I had a hard day, I'm like, oh, and there was food at home, but I find myself at the drive-through spending extra money unnecessarily, it's because of something else that was happening in my life. It wasn't necessarily about the money. That's just the symptom that was popping up from what was going on,
Mm.
deeper down.
Hey, family, I hope you've been loving the conversation so far. Now, you already know at the Inspired House, we got your back. We're here to help you beat burnout. We're here to help you be your best self. Ultimately, we're just trying to help you feel good. But you know what goes a long way in somebody feeling good? It's looking good. And that's why we're really excited for the sponsor of today's episode, Purpose Grooming Lounge, right here in Rochester, New York. The Purpose Grooming Lounge is one of the best barbershops in the Rochester area. And if you're from Rochester, you know this place is no secret. And if you heard of the shop, then you already know about the owner, Jamil Gaines. Mill is one of the best barbers in the city and who I personally trust to keep me clean and tight for every podcast, for every workshop, and for every video we put out on the Inspired House. But if you don't believe me, take his word for it.
Hey, this is Mills, Them People's Barber. If you're looking for a good haircut, good quality professional service, come on down to Purpose Grooming Lounge.
Hey, shout out to Mills and all the barbers at the Purpose Grooming Lounge. Check them out at 6 Atlas Street, Rochester, New York. And if you go in and decide to get a 90s high top fade like me, just tell them the Inspired House sent you. Back to the show. I've never heard kind of cause and effect explained in such a way before of like I'm sitting here and like I'm really ready to be honest with you. I'm really ready to turn my camera off because I'm like, yo, stop telling my business, bro. Like, yo, chill. I'm sitting here, I'm still like, yeah, there's definitely been some days at the hospital. Stopped at McDonald's afterwards, like, man, let me get a mocha frap at like 8 p.m. It's like, for what? You're supposed to go to bed. And so, wow, I can only begin to imagine kind of, again, going back to that clarity when you start seeing those pieces in that coding. I guess if if there was another maybe misbelief, I think that we have, I think you've addressed it, where we can look at systemic things and those things are very real. And I think of like the work that we do at the Inspired House in terms of helping people with wellness and dealing with burnout and looking at the systemic effects and looking at those mismatches of, oh, well, if you're feeling like you have a workload mismatch, that can be very real and that can be leading to burnout. But it's not because you can't do the work, you just may not have the resources. But if you don't have the clarity, how can you know to get the resources so that you can actually advocate for yourself to do the work? But there is also that opportunity for resilience and kind of building yourself up in there. So for me, my question is for you as a coach who does this work, how do you kind of talked about it a little bit, but how do you do that balance of there can be things going on around you that can be real and you hold that while also holding that truth of things that could be going on kind of within you. You kind of talked about the coding, but when someone pushes back and they're just like, there's just so much going on around me, you don't get it. How have you dealt with that tension?
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this recently. I really do my best. I try. I'm not perfect. So as you're feeling like you want to turn your camera off, I'm talking about myself too in all of this. Um, to shift my focus to control and contribution. What was within my control? What can I control? And how can I contribute? So those are the only things that I can really do actually in any, quick matter of time. There's so much happening in the world, there's so much going on, globally and locally, that it's easy to get bogged down by all of that stuff. But what I lean into is my specific area of contribution. And that's me being a present parent as much as I possibly can, supporting my
Mm-hmm.
husband and, my friends and family. But it's also like the mission of my work, really, at the end of the day. My goal is to make women ridiculously wealthy so that they can make the world a better place. Because when money is no longer an issue, when you talk to most women, they really just want to take care of people, in different ways. Like every single person that I've talked to, and all people, I'm married to a man, so, I love guys too. But
Mm-hmm.
I really feel called to work in this area where I'm helping women remove money as a roadblock to them stepping into their potential. And so when things get
Mm-hmm.
wild in the world, truthfully, sometimes I struggle with like marketing and but I'm like, no, I have to double down on that so that I can empower as many people to position themselves to be able to have freedom and flexibility for themselves, but also because then their overflow goes to tithing. Their overflow goes to making their community better and the initiatives that they want to create to make the world a better place. And that is
Mm-hmm.
my contribution. My contribution is to help the helpers so that they can help as many possible people. And when I do that, it makes me feel a little bit more a little bit less overwhelmed and a little bit more hopeful about
Mm-hmm.
the future, as opposed to feeling like, oh well, woe is us, like nothing's ever going to change. I just think that that's a disempowered position to be in. And when you take responsibility, what's my responsibility in this, what can I do, then you're empowered to be able to influence change. So I actually lean into times where things are interesting for lack of better terms,
Yeah.
and difficult, because I'm like, okay, like this is the perfect opportunity for folks to really take things seriously. Sadly, for a lot of people, without there being an external trigger, a lot of the times we'll just kind of coast because we're comfortable.
Mm.
So when things become pressured, it sometimes creates an opportunity. Would I prefer for people to work on their finances when things are hunky dory? Yes, it's a lot easier. But if
Yeah.
not, we can also figure it out when things are going sideways too.
I appreciate that because I think, to your point, there's that opportunity. One of the words you used was empowered, and I really like that because I'm definitely a proponent and someone who thinks in terms of acknowledging the systems, but also trying my best to keep in mind what's in my locus of control, what's in my power, because I don't want to go to the other far extreme where it's like everything's worthless. What's the point? Because then we just end up kind of getting worse and worse and worse. And so that there is that freedom of empowerment, which I think I would argue. I think sometimes we use the word accountability, and that can sometimes be triggering for folk. Where it's like, what am I accountable to if something is happening to me? But switching that for empowerment, I think, is so much better. So, what has what has this kind of mean to you to be in this work, to have such a very clear mission? Oh, better question. Walk me through what it was like when maybe you had your first client success, and what did that do for you?
I definitely used to think I was a unicorn. So I didn't really think I didn't go into this with it being the purpose to help anyone else with their money. I literally was focused on figuring out my own finances, and then people, asked me questions and they wanted to learn about whatever I was doing, and they wanted to know what they should do in their situations. And I don't necessarily advise, but I, help create an environment that helps people get that clarity on what they need to do. So when someone got results, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm not a unicorn. maybe, maybe there's something here to be able to help other people, get clear on what they want in their finances and how to get there. And it really was like this thread that I just began to kind of pull on, which was exciting because it was like one person and then it was another person. And so, really, I think it was 2020. I was almost done paying off my debt because I paid it off by May of 2020. And it was the end of January where I was just threw it out there. I was just like, hey, I'm going to do this financial challenge in February for anyone who wants to like do it with me, sign up, whatever. And it was free. And like 10 people signed up, like 9 women and 1 guy, I think. And in that challenge, everyone made progress. But what was really impactful to see was that's just around when I started doing my podcast too. Someone had already saved $1,000 before the challenge ever began from listening to one podcast episode that I posted. One podcast episode, she saved $1,000. And then she did the challenge and it just snowballed from there. And I was like, what? It's kind of like, okay. I really don't take ownership for like my students' success. I really am like they're the ones that are doing the work, but I understand that like maybe something that I'm doing is the vehicle for them to be able to make strides in their finances. And so February 2020, her and someone else I think also saved $500, something like that. And then what happened in March of 2020? The whole world shut down. Sophie, she lost her job. And so if she didn't save for the couple of months prior to losing her job, she would have been in a worse position. And because she had a little bit of cushion, she was less stressed about her situation than if she hadn't. And that's for me, that's where I was like, whoa, this is really important. This is really something that we need to figure out how to help other people to do. Like I've done it for myself, but how do we turn this into something that can help others? Because we just don't know when something's going to happen in life. We don't know when the tire is going to blow. We don't know when someone's going to get sick. We don't know when there's going to be a job loss or things happening in the world. Like, what are you doing today to prepare future you to have more ease, a little bit more peace of mind and cushion when life happens? Not if, but when life happens. So yeah, it was probably 2020 when that happened. And I was like, okay, how do we keep doing this? How do we help more people gain results? And now, we're able to help our students typically make anywhere between like a $40,000 and $50,000 difference in their finances in the first year alone, between paying off debt, saving, investing, saving on their taxes, and or earning more money, whatever it is. So it's really exciting to see.
That is a big wow. Yo, that first off, shout out to you, Sophie. I'm happy you were able to get that coaching and get through. Like, shout out to you. That is awesome. So when that is amazing in terms of results. And I'm curious on when you're doing, I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it. When you're doing something like that, people are at different stages of their life, right? Some people, they might be married. Some people, they might be, solo dolo, and they're working and doing their thing. But we also have some people in our audience that are like either in college or about to graduate from college. And they sometimes have like the most money questions because they're feeling like, I got these loans coming. I gotta get a perfect job, and I gotta launch, or I gotta leave the nest right, or I'm gonna be in trouble. And you've done so much in your own money journey. What would be some advice you would have for some of our college friends, whether in school or about to kind of transition and graduate, in terms of maybe something you would advise them to do with regards to their money?
Definitely. And I said Sophie, it's Sophia, but uh, to me, the three principles, because I love principle based kind of
Mm-hmm.
frameworks when it comes to money, are that personal finance is personal. So keep your eyes on your own paper, pretty much. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to hear a lot, you're going to see a lot, but make sure that whatever it is that you're doing in your finances is, specific to you and your situation. The second is to pay yourself first. So whatever it is that you're making, you're, making sure that you're growing that money muscle around saving and investing. So doing that early, because if you're just coming out of school, that means that you're, I'm assuming, right? Young-ish, 20s, 30s, or whatever the case is, you have time on your side to be able to benefit from compounding interest. So being able to pay yourself first and start early, be consistent over time. And then the third is to live on less than you make. So it's really like very basic principles. I get a lot of people working with me, or like questions from all over the world. And I'm like, well, the US is different than Canada, is different than Nairobi. And how do we make, finance make sense for anyone around the world? Personal finance is personal. What is your specific situation? Pay yourself first and live on less than you make. So don't get a salary and start flexing or buying things that hinder your ability to make sure that you also are paying down your debt, that you're also investing for the future. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any fun at all, but I am saying that you want to have the right boundaries to protect you tomorrow just as much as you protect yourself today. And so that would be kind of like my first thing to say. I call it the three B's. So your background, beliefs, and boundaries. For someone who is being cognizant or has questions around like finance and like what to do, I would want to do like an assessment of your money mindset, right? So it's like, well, what did you learn or not learn about money growing up? Because that gives you an idea of what those gaps might be in young adulthood and what you want to learn about to fill those gaps, right? Our backgrounds usually inform our beliefs. So, for example, if I grew up and heard, we can't afford that. Do you have McDonald's money? Like, money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil, or whatever, right? Like, that I might create this belief because we didn't have it growing up. I can't afford, we can't afford, or whatever. That, well, I deserve. Well, what does that turn into in your boundaries? Every time that you work and then you get paid, you're like, well, I deserve to go shopping. And it's not that you don't deserve those things. Of course you do. But future you also deserves a certain level of peace when it comes to your finances as much as you do today. So can we split the difference and and give future you a shot while you, okay, get a bag, but it doesn't need to be that bag. Can you buy the bag twice? If you can't, maybe you need to buy half the price of whatever that bag is and put the other portion away. So I think if you are in a situation where you are paying yourself first, you are managing, your debt wisely, and that the rest of it can be overflow, the rest of it can go to whatever you would like, but it's kind of making sure those pieces are in place first consistently so that you aren't compromising yourself tomorrow for what you want today. So yeah, that's what I would say initially. Checking in with your background, your beliefs, and your boundaries.
Yo, family, what you got going on right now? What you doing? Nothing? I didn't think so. Look, you should stop over the house. Yes, I am cordially inviting you. But wait, not my house. Not here. God, no, no. I'm talking about our online community, the Inspired House, family. Check it out. The Inspired House is a place where you can get coaching, be a part of co-working spaces virtually so you don't got to be grinding alone, sit in on our podcast and ask questions of the amazing guests that we're interviewing, and find community where there are other folk who are focused on bettering themselves, bettering their relationships, bettering their careers, and of course, bettering their money. So if you are someone who's looking to be tied in with community and you want to rock with us a little bit more, click the link in the description or check out the show notes and come be a part of the Inspired House community. Welcome home. Background, beliefs, boundaries. And you said, yes, you work hard and you deserve something nice, but so does future you. And I'm sitting here like, uh, I want to hide my screen again. I'm really tempted to hide my screen again and let this be a solo pod because but that's just said that's so real though. Because how often are we thinking about the gratification of now that we forget about the premise of delayed gratification and taking care of future you, which begs then the question, and it's making me thinking, if we're having such a hard time of taking care of future you, then how do you expect to take care of your kids, right? For me, like as for me as a believer, I think of the scripture where it says like a wise person lays up an inheritance for the next generation, for their kids. And if you're so caught up in yo, I deserve it. Kind of again, those that cause and effect, those triggers, those things that lead to the emotional spending and things of that nature, then yeah, you're not going to take care of future you and that relationship with future you. I've heard it in other places. I've never, this probably sounds terrible to say on a podcast. I've never thought about it in terms of finances though. Taking care of future you financially in that premise of it is really powerful. When did that become real for you?
I mean, it was experimental in the beginning. So when I started my financial journey in 2017, that's where it all stemmed from, was really thinking about how do I prepare future me, especially in the instance that I end up getting married again, and in the instance that I become a parent, which I have done both of those things at this point. And so uh, it's I think beyond having an idea of what you want to do, one of the biggest questions I receive is how to stay motivated when you're on your journey, because life is going to life.
Yeah,
And to
yeah.
me, you have to have such a compelling vision that you're convicted about it. It can't just be a nice to have kind of thing. It can't just be like, oh, it would be nice to like have some extra money, or it'd be nice to travel or whatever. It needs to be like conviction. You need to be convicted, because when you're convicted,
Mm,
you can't not figure out a way, And so I feel like
yeah.
I feel like I was convicted. Even if I didn't have kids, I had nieces and nephews. I also again was born in Uganda, so and my family, left the country for political reasons, right? They were refugees.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I felt like I would be doing a disservice almost to like my lineage to not make the most out of the choices that the people before me made. They did everything
Yeah.
in their power to create opportunities for me, to keep me safe, to put me in the right environment, or the environment they believed was going to be best for me. So it's almost kind of like running a relay race, and they ran their leg and they passed the baton to me, and now I'm coming into young adulthood, and what am I doing with my race, with my leg of the race for the next generation? And I'm handing the baton off to my kids, or I'm handing the baton off to my nieces and nephews, or whatever the case is. So it really did. I think that's the piece of like, you're probably not going to be motivated, and that's okay. if you're convicted, you will be compelled to move forward because you just it hits different when you really are very clear on what's compelling for you.
You said convicted, like it's a conviction for you. How does, for someone who is not good with money to begin with, or they have trauma that's tied to money, or whatever, how do you go about even building a conviction towards something so that you can stick it out when it gets hard?
Yeah, I think we all have it. We just life is busy and there's a lot of noise. So
Hmm.
the conviction gets buried. So if you want to find what you're convicted about, think about what makes you upset. Like I was working a 9 to 5, and I actually used to work at hotels here in Las Vegas at the front desk. And you there was like this really strict point system about like if you were late and different things like that. You had to request your time off, and oftentimes they would like deny requests for people. So I heard horror stories of people like missing their siblings wedding or something because their requests were denied, like just like wild stuff. The conviction for me in the beginnings came from like feeling like I couldn't do what I wanted. And I'm not gonna curse. I would be darned if
She
I was
said
not
that.
gonna get my own time off. You gonna tell me I can't
Yeah.
go do something? I've left jobs for that. And so I'm not,
Yeah.
but that's my personality. That's what I'm convicted about. Maybe someone else is convicted about their kids, you know what I mean? Maybe someone else is convicted about their parent aging, and like how are we gonna do this because our parent is not financially set up for success. So I know I'm going to be taking on the brunt of some of this. I need to figure this out, right? And I also want to make sure that the end of their life is as comfortable as it can be. So it's like really just beginning to get quiet the noise and get rid of whatever's on top of what you're already convicted about, because usually there's something in you that could get you riled up if you started talking about it, or thinking about it, and that begins to be kind of like the fuel that you start with.
Wow. So looking at what gets you riled up, what gets you upset, um, is making me think what we've called it in the Inspired House is like, what's your bat signal? What's the thing that, like, when it's out there, you're like, oh, this is what I wanna, this is what's calling me, this is what gets me going. And so you make the argument that everybody has this kind of conviction, and it's just kind of taking some time. And what I'm hearing threaded through over and over again, it sounds like a lot of this is, it starts with being intentional. It starts with kind of being mindful. I think in the environment and in the society we have so many distractions. We got social media, we got streaming. I mean, in the work I do at the hospitals, just as much as we hear about patients and patient care and safety, we also hear about, oh, what happened on Baddies, oh, Love Island, oh, everything else you could think of. And so, how how have been ways you've gone about shutting down some of that noise so that you can focus in, and so that you can kind of do some of that reflection piece, because it sounds like you've done a lot of that work. So was it just, is it like, have you had like your own system? Was it more of just the crap hitting the fan around you and you were like, oh, I gotta lock in? What did that look like for you in terms of how did you go about doing reflection, and how did you go about being mindful? Or was that just always something for you?
It's definitely a practice, one that I honed the skill of, you know, uh, briefly before I started my financial journey, and definitely during. So it was, and that probably the benefit of being like a millennial, right? Like growing up with a house phone and beepers at the same time as like the internet was
Yeah.
becoming a thing. Um, I remember where there was when there was a time where you wake up and you don't touch any electronics for hours into the day, you know? So it was this combination of being intentional, like you mentioned, about what I do in what order. So I would spend time before really going into the world and like social media and stuff like that, spending a period of time like writing, That was one of the biggest things that I did. I wrote nearly every day during my financial journey, and it's called scripting. So speaking kind of in terms of the thing already being done, like the things that you want happening, and that was a huge piece of the puzzle for me. Definitely like prayer, meditation, like having time where there is nothing on, like music or the TV or whatever the case is. Some people are like, what? Like, yeah, be bored. Let there be quiet. Like, hear your own thoughts. But again, I thought I was a
Mhm.
unicorn because literally this is stuff that I was teaching in classes and stuff like that. So I was like, this is the weird, you know, development world that I kind of am in and I'm obsessed with. But I'll
Mhm.
say I'm really proud of my 13-year-old daughter because yesterday I came downstairs and she was like, I had the best morning. I'm like, oh, she's like, I got up when my alarm went off. I did everything that I, need to do to get ready for the day before I ever touched my phone. And so we encourage her to like take care of herself first, put her armor on, is what I tell her, before she enters the world. And the way I describe it to her is like, you don't walk out the front door naked. So why would you get on the phone or get on the internet or whatever? That's like going into a whole world, multiple worlds without your armor on. And so the way that you quiet the noise is to make sure that you are protected before you jump into all of the things that are happening. So I was proud because she was like, and I can feel the difference because when things came up that would otherwise upset me, I handled them better. And I'm like, oh, this is what it is. It's not just about money. It's about so much more than that. But it is also about money. So we can't forget about that.
Wow, yo, I love that. You said you wouldn't just go outside naked. You would make sure you're clothed and you get yourself right. And yeah, it's amazing how sometimes the answers can be so simple and we want to overcomplicate things. And so with the little bit of time that we have left, I'm thinking honestly, just saying, there might be someone who's listening right now. They're probably stressed about money. They're probably, because of our audience, they might be burned out and they just don't know where to start. I know you talked about journaling and scripting. Is there anything else you would recommend for someone to do, like starting today?
Starting today, I would say, what is your number one money goal right now? Whether it's to pay off debt or to save money or to invest or to learn about money, maybe it's more so like improving your relationship. And then what's the smallest, most ridiculous thing that you could do that would get you closer to that? So if it's, can you save a penny today? Can you pay off $1? Can you invest 10? And to actually execute on that action, even though it's small, because it's not about the amount, it's about creating the habit. And the more that you get your reps in, the better you'll get at the thing. So, whatever your primary financial goal is, if it's to learn more about money, then maybe it's to reach out and I can make recommendations specific for you, or you know what I mean? Listen
Mhm.
to a financial podcast or go to the library. There's plenty of free books at the library. But what we know is the way to nearly guarantee your success is the word that you've been using a little bit here is accountability. Like when you have accountability, you're 95% more likely to hit your goals. So is it
Mm.
a friend, a sibling, a family member, you know, your pastor, like where can you get accountability safely and that is actually supportive and helpful for you? Don't go to the person that's mean and doesn't believe in you. Go to the person that's going to be in your corner and cheer you on and have your back. And let them know, hey, I want to focus on my finances. I don't know where to start, but this is where I'm starting because I know accountability works. And so I think that, the smallest, most ridiculous action that you can take today is one step toward whatever your primary financial goal is. And then send somebody a DM. Send him a DM, send me a DM. Let us know what that was so that we can say, "Hey, you did it. Keep going."
That's a whole fact. I absolutely love that. And again, it's like you said, it's taking a step, building that muscle, that repetition, and the power of what I'm really hearing from you is community. You find accountability in community. You find like-minded people in community. You get empowered and equipped in community, whether that's a financial community, whether that's the Inspired House, whether your church community or whatever. And I think that is so important that we're not, to your point, you're focusing on your money and not looking like at other people's, but you're not just doing it alone because there's strength and there's power in numbers. Oh wow, been spending too much time with my kid. She still has that toddler accent, and so I'm still sometimes it just I catch it. I want to know, but before we go, I have two things. I always like to for people to know how they can connect with you, and work with you, and where they can find you. But I always ask this question of every guest: if the world stage, if for whatever reason, all TVs, all podcasts, all radios, everything was set to one channel, and you were given the mic and access to share a message with the entire world, what would that be?
You're worthy. Simple. You're
Mm.
worthy. That's it.
Mic drop. I love it. Just said, thank you so much. How can people connect with you?
Best place to connect is on Instagram and YouTube, both at Jacent Wamala. And yeah, that's where you can find me sharing tips and information and also fun stuff as it pertains to money, mindset, and life overall.
We love it. Jacint, thank you so much. People who are watching this, whether live or watching the recording, please let us know. Drop in the comments below what you're looking to learn or what getting help in your finances would mean for you. And the Inspired House is going to be gifting 3 winners with a copy of your. Wait, do you mind talking about your book?
Yeah, I can. So,
Yeah, that's really good.
the Financial Freedom Formula, 5 Steps to Decrease Debt, Increase Your Income, and Save Money, is a book that actually kind of doubles as a workbook because every chapter has money moves in it with lines and everything where you can physically write your answers in. It is written about my journey and experience, but also other people and how they were able to make strides in their finances, like Sophia, who started off by saving $1,000 in a month and then growing her business in during the pandemic. And really, it's meant to be kind of like if you're looking for that first step, where do I begin? The book will help make it really easy to navigate that journey, starting with mindset and then practical, tactical money moves. So it's rated 5 stars on Amazon, nothing but good reviews, and can't wait for you to check it out.
You came out here. You were like 5 stars on Amazon, no big deal. We love it. We love it. Just said, thank you so much for everybody who's been watching today. Please take the lessons to heart, do the work. As always in the Inspired House, let's continue to work to be better together. And we'll be tagging everything for Jacent and all the work that she does that you can get access to that. But in the meantime, I've been Desmond. Jacent, thank you so much for your time. Inspired House fam, we'll see you next week. Take care.